One of the most important parts of JavaScript is that you have functions in this. So basically, what are functions? Now let's just say we have a set of rules to do. We have some set of methods to do, basically like getting the height of a window, getting the width of a window, or calculating area, checking a value, a lot of other things. So what we can do is we can group all of these functions, or you can take some of this function and you can group them into separate pieces. We can call these separate pieces as functions. For example, in order to calculate an area, we can get window height, width, and you can calculate area and we can store that area, and we can call that as a calculate area function. The same thing we can do it for the create message. So we can do the calculations, we can check the value, and we can output the message, and we can store all of that inside a create message function. We can do the same thing for the animate image also. We can get the image position, calculate a new value, set the image position, and do a lot more other stuff, and then we can store all of those options inside animate image function. So one of the basic questions is, where do we declare functions? So what you have to always know that you have to declare the functions once you write the function. So define your functions before you call them. So you'll have to always define your functions before you call them. So for example, if you create your function and then if you define it, so basically this function is going to look for before even it is called. So since the function does not exist, that's going to throw up an error. So instead what you can do is you can define your function first, maybe like do something, and then you can call the my function later. So in that way, as soon as the function is called, it is going to look before where it is declared, and then it's going to do whatever you have specified the function to do for. Now functions can have parameters. So basically parameters are written inside these parentheses. So just say I have given a parameter like x, y, and z. So here I'm storing all of these calculations inside a. So I'm adding all x, y, and z. I'm storing all of that value inside a variable a. Then I'm going to output that variable a here, and here I can use a return function. So what's happening here is my function is getting the value from the user, it is calculating it, storing the data inside the variable a, and also it is returning it to the browser with the return value. So basically my function is going to be more like my function 2, 3, and 4. It's going to output the data. So let's see how this works. So I'm inside my page here. So what we can do is we can create a new function. I'm going to call this as my function, and inside this I'm going to store x, y, and z, and inside this we'll say console.log, and here we can tell what that to do. So we need to calculate x plus y plus z. And to give a comma here, and now we can declare this function. So this is my function. I'm just going to copy this and can go back to my browser. I hit refresh and I can type in my function and I can put in the value. So let's just say I want to calculate 25 plus 25 plus 25. When I hit enter, that gives me the answer as 75. Now when you're creating variables inside the function, you have to always remember about the scopes. A variable which is created inside the function is called as a local scope. A variable which is created outside the function is called global scope. The reason is this variable is only calculated when the function is running, and once the running of the function is finished, this variable does not exist anymore. But when it comes for global scope, when you create a variable outside the function, you can actually call it inside your function also, do the calculation, and then the variable is still available outside the function. That's why it's called the global scope. Now remember, a variable which is inside the function is called a local scope. A variable which is outside the function is called global scope. Most of the times this happens that when you create a function and you forget to add a value. For example, let's create a my function and you're specifying x, y, and z, and when you run this function, you forget to add the next one. So basically what happens here is the z becomes undefined. And when you create another function, we'll just say x, y, and z, but by mistake if you add another value, what happens here is the another extra value is basically ignored. So let's see how that works. Now here in our function we can see that we have added this x, y, and z, and basically we are calculating by adding it. Let's get back to our browser. I'm going to hit refresh. I'm going to call the same function again, but this time I'm going to add 25 extra. So if the calculation is going to take with all the additions, it should give me 100, but it will not. If I hit enter, it's basically going to give me 75.